We're back with another DC breakdown, and this time we're doing Campaign 3, Episode 6 of Critical Role. We got double nat 20s, we got character flaws coming up to the surface, and a lot of role play. And for the breakdown this time, I'm only hitting those 3 topics. I'm really going to dive into it pretty in depth because there's kind of a little bit of a maybe controversial point I want to make here about nat 20s and how Matt Mercer handles this nat 20 moment. So let me know down in the comments if you like this focused, pointed approach or the overarching broad sweep across the whole thing. Hit that like button if you like what I do and leave a comment for any sort of feedback as well on top of the points that we want to discuss down there in the comments, because I'm still refining this series and really want to take it to the next level. But before we can get to that level, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Thanks, Coach. That's right. And the sponsor is the Dungeon Coach Patreon. Apparently it's a lot to be a full-time teacher and make 3 videos across 2 channels and monthly PDFs of over 30 pages and while writing a book. So Patreon really fuels that fire. I put this headset on and the accent just came over me. But that's right, on top of supporting this crazy individual stream of content, you also get monthly PDFs to help your D&D games with resources, monsters, homebrew rules, and tons of stuff. And hold on, what's that? I think we got a message coming in here about some sort of special offer.
That's right, because normally whenever you join to become a patron, you always get 2 months of PDFs. But now, during the month of December, you get 4 months of PDFs, volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you join during the month of December. I've hacked a system to give you this sweet deal, but even if you're watching this in the future, you should still join, because it's really cool. Hack to you.
All right, first up from these big 3 clips we're going into, because I'm saving the spiciest one for last, is role play. So much role play. This session started off with about 45 minutes of player-led role play. There's some awesome things about that, and there's also some things I want to break down about that. But how this whole session started off, I'm literally minutes into the stage being set, everything opening up, them kind of settling into this little bar-type tavern area, and this happens. Taliesin, the player of Ashton, is coming up with this role play game, and I think this is awesome. Some of you players out there, take this little nugget, maybe use it in your thing, but we'll talk about that after. It's just a game that you want to play, drinking some drinks with your friends.
So, we're going to play a little game that I learned a few years ago.
Ooh, I like games.
It's called, or at least what we call it is, what the fuck is up with that?
All right.
Lowest roll has to answer a question truthfully and not too vaguely. Ooh. Highest roll gets to ask it.
Ooh.
And then we drink.
Simple as that. That's the start, and it was 45 minutes of this, and we'll get into the overall, what the big overarching view of this entire episode was, because this entire episode was role play. It was social encounters, I guess you could say. So that pillar, which we'll talk about pillars too. So this game is really cool. I love it. It's player-led. Matt got to sit there. This is a gift as a dungeon master. When your players can just go and interact like that, that's not normal, though. That's not normal. So I'm going to have some other things to think about here. We are all aware of the Matt Mercer effect, but no one really talks about the Critical Role players effect, the Liam O'Brien effect, the Marisha Ray effect. Right now, we're talking about the Taliesin Jaffe effect. These Critical Role players are great role players. They have great characters, great voices, all these other things to elevate the quality of the game as well. I could do a whole video on that. Let me know, because I have lots of thoughts on that as far as people comparing their home games to this, because you can't do that. So anyway, this is a great thing for a player to do, though. Oh my gosh, I love this. I have 2 different players at my table that have these little moments where one of them created a game to play with amongst the players at the table and has a list of role play questions to ask other players when they have one-on-one moments. Those are the amazing types of things I love when players do, and it helps bring the group together, and it's not me forcing it on them, right? So Taliesin comes up with this game that's going to open up backstory questions. You have this group that's from very different places. Bertrand Bell brought them together, but this group is now kind of starting to try and form and lock in together so they all have reasons to be together, because that just feels better that way. It makes more sense for them to actually stay together as a unit. So this question tied to the dice, they roll, and they even role play it. So I guess there are actual, in their characters are rolling dice. So there's a little bit of a meta thing going on there. But it's really cool because the lowest person has to answer a question and be honest about it. Like, be honest, here we go. And I guess you could lie and there could be some sort of insight. We talked about that in other videos of these breakdowns, but the highest player gets to ask a question. So the combinations, not only is there going to be cool, interesting questions being asked and like truth or dare type situation, the pairings of who's asking the question to who also match up. And there's also cool things if you didn't see the episode, because again, you don't have to watch the episode to be able to watch these things, is they had different parts where once you had the lowest person, you can't get the lowest person again. Once you become the lowest person and you've gotten asked the question to, you don't count towards who had the lowest roll. So that's cool. And you can also contribute to brainstorming what the question should be if somebody's kind of drawing a blank. So you're not like, left out. So overall, I loved it. It was a really cool thing and a player-led role play. But at your tables, that might not be a thing. There might not be enough players. If there's only 3, this game might only last 1 round. And maybe just have it be that. That's all it has to do. They did multiple rounds. I think they did 7 rounds for all 7 players. But at your table, maybe just have it be 1 round. And it's just this fun thing. And you do it for downtime. You play this game and then you call it a day. And you describe that they go to sleep and they get their long rest and whatever. Or another thing that's cool is maybe one of your NPCs as a dungeon master. If you want to introduce this, have an NPC that they come along their journey at some point, they come across NPCs that stay with them for a night or so, or they are in town and they have whatever, and they're at the bar and maybe the bartender wants to play this game with them. How cool is that? And then you as the dungeon master can maybe intervene in there if your players aren't strong role players, something that I really have lots of different things I'm working on in Alcanar's Almanac of social role play rules to help people coax them out of that role play shell. You can, as the dungeon master, lead the thing about asking the question who's there, and the NPC can be there to ask, help poke in questions or answer questions themselves or whatever. Now, here's what I want to talk about this though. This entire episode was social encounters. The 3 pillars of Dungeons and Dragons: combat, social encounters, exploration. All they did was social encounters, right? Is that okay to have a session of? Is that bad? Is that going to ostracize people? Should you watch out for that? Should you make sure not to do that? This is now where it gets to be you dungeon masters out there have to decide this for yourselves. The biggest thing I'll say here from a breakdown perspective is you want to make sure there is balance in your game. Maybe not your session, but in your game. And the second point to that is you want to make sure to customize your game and the balance of it to your players, right? If you run a game, I've talked to many people and I know many players that they are literal combat gamers. That's all they want to do is combat. Dungeon of the Mad Mage, throw them in there, let them go through it, and they don't care about role play and they just want to hack through a dungeon. That's a totally acceptable way to play the game. There's also people that love social intrigue and they don't even really have a combat. Maybe there's some sort of skill challenge type combat or maybe one combat at the end or something, but there's mostly social and talking and deduction and the whole thing's role play. And then there's hex crawl maps where you love travel and exploration, right? So it is based off of your group. So is it bad that they had an entire session of role play? No. If the players were down for it, and as Taliesin said, and as you all can see if you're watching it, they're having a blast. Now, myself watching it, I'd like to see some combat. I'd like to see some sort, but I like to see a balance of it if I was only watching one episode. But I guarantee you there's going to be an episode of only combat. You know what I'm saying? So these things need to be balanced for the group. And as a props to Critical Role, whenever I start streaming eventually, whenever I can stream my home games, I am not going to cater to, it's a production and I want to make sure the audience gets, even distribution, because people in the audience also have certain preferences towards what kind of D&D they want to watch, right? And so maybe some people say, this is just a boring episode. And in reality, it was a very heavily social. It was not super moments right here. So I would say this was my least favorite of the 6, but I still enjoyed it because it's part of the big picture. And these role play intertwining of characters is going to come up. They're going to be better off together. They're more linked together, and it's a bigger payoff in the future. So from a production standpoint, if you think about an audience level, because this is what Critical Role has, we at home playing our own home games don't have an audience to worry about, only worry about your players. But this, I think, is further props to Critical Role and the legitimacy of them just playing the game that they want to play. Because I guarantee if this was some sort of all right, we need a production, Matt, we're going to need a combat here. This is not going to fly. The fans aren't going to like it. No, there could have maybe been a combat if they went different ways or different things went different ways. But it's not going to be forced, right? So let your campaign be what it is. Let the players steer themselves. And if they steer themselves towards sketchy combat things, let them go for it. If they want to have an entire session of roleplay, let them go for it. But make sure, I would, if I was Matt Mercer this time, I would make sure to kind of talk to everybody, be like, are y'all cool with this whole, you know, like we didn't really have a combat this whole time, you know, like the whole thing. Is everybody fine? Now, he might not need to do that because he's played with these people for forever. But if this happened to me, we had 2 sessions in a row where there wasn't a combat. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. We had a big old skill challenge. We had a combat, like capture the flag type contest, but it wasn't a grid map, 30 feet of movement, action, bonus action, combat in 2 sessions. There's a lot of role play, a lot of things building up. Everybody was fine with it because next time, but I knew 2 of my players really were jonesing for some combat, and then I hit them with it at the beginning of next session. You know what I'm saying? So have that pulse check for your group. Point number 2 here, we're talking about Imogen and her character flaw being tied to her character's power. How cool is that? Imogen she is a aberrant mind sorcerer. So she's a sorcerer that has psychic mind reading type powers, right? Her character's flaw is she's this heavy introvert. It speaks to me so much. I am a huge introvert. When I'm out around a bunch of people, it drains my energy and I get a little overwhelmed and I get a little stressed out and it's right? So I really relate to these moments at a personal level when she's talking about like, okay, can we just like do this thing outside, or like, this is a lot right now. We've been out for a while. Can we just, you know what I'm saying? I love Imogen for that reason. But the thing I love the most, and I never even realized this, her character's flaw is her source of power. She has literally taken aberrant mind sorcerer's psychic abilities and turned that into, she can soak in so much psychic around her that it causes her to hear the voices and she can go crazy, and it breaks her down in some ways. It drains her. That's so beautiful. I just got nerd chills thinking about that. This makes me want to apply it in different scenarios. What if you took your character's power and turned it into their flaw and let it trickle into the role play? This is a role play episode. Why not talk about it? Think of a barbarian. Rage, right? They have a combat mechanic of rage. They get angry and they all that kind of stuff, right? Now you could easily twist the flavor of rage to be something else. I've had Dragonborns like it be a transform effect where their body changes and that's their rage. They're still the same, demeanor. They don't have to act just crazed and angry, right? You can always reflavor it. But what if you take this rage and you dial it up a notch like the Imogen did, and you bleed it into your entire character's personality? If you have anger issues, right? Like a really bad anger issues where somebody looks at you the wrong way and you go off on them and it causes problems that you have to like figure out and manage, and it causes problems to the rest of your group around you. Now, talk with the players, make sure they're on the same page of like working together through these flaws. Your dungeon master can work with you through a flaw, present you with challenges to your flaw and ways to overcome this. And then maybe this hypothetical barbarian in my mind, starts to overcome this rage and gets a hold of it through the help of their party, through the help of somebody they meet, and they start to manage this rage, and then they don't get angry anymore and things don't make them as mad, and maybe they start taking levels in monk or whatever, or fighter, to kind of like train and hone in and focus. And speaking of Imogen, let's talk about a scene during this massive roleplay scene where they're drinking. They have 7 rounds, they're doing a drinking game of the sharing this information, but she has to keep so much focus on her mind, keeping out these voices as she's drinking and getting drunk. That ability is lessening. There's some sort of secret mechanic going on behind the scenes, because if you notice, Laura's rolling these self-rolling. Matt's not asking her to roll this. She is self-rolling her own character stuff to kind of see how she feels. Now, myself personally, I love self-rolled character things just to kind of see, but it was something that I would work with the player out before to kind of let them have some sort of control over how random it's going to be, because maybe they want to have control over it some, or maybe they want to give control to you as the dungeon master and let you be the one that's like, oh, no, you're okay. And then choose those moments for it to not be. Because that's why I'm showing this clip, that she's rolling these things and she has a moment where she's been rolling really low, and maybe there's some sort of thing happening. Because it hasn't happened yet, rolling in episode 6, but there hasn't been her mental breakdown, literally psychic mental breakdown yet. So here's the clip.
I know plenty.
Two more rounds at least. We got 2 more rounds.
I should say
Well, it's just
that
you and me, right?
I've been rolling and I am rolling poorly, and my attempts to keep my wall up. Mm-hmm. So I would say I'm probably getting open mind at this point.
One more drink, and I think you'll cross that threshold.
Why don't y'all roll, because only me and Laudna are left to answer.
So there it is. This was really interesting. I don't know if you guys picked up on this or noticed it, but they do another round of this thing. She has another drink, and nothing still happens. So Laura, as the player playing this character, she said, "I've been rolling really low, and I think it's gonna time for this whatever the secret mechanic is to happen." And then Matt trumps her and says, "No, not yet." Now, I think there's maybe some sort of like big reveal type stuff going on. Maybe this would not be a good place to do it. Maybe it should be whenever it's in combat, or if they're under some sort of stress. This is maybe a little bit too easygoing for this big moment to be revealed. So as the dungeon master, Matt is wanting to have this. I love big cool reveals. I love big reveals. I'm about to give one to my players tomorrow in our next session, but maybe it's not the right time, right? Maybe you delay it just a little bit because it wouldn't be right in this moment. So Laura's rolling these dice and it triggers, and she says it triggers, but he's no, one more drink. And then they have the drink, which technically should have triggered it maybe, but then it doesn't. So it's just not the right time yet. So as a dungeon master, we want to keep control over these certain things, right? These are the gray areas that I love talking about in these breakdowns, because as a dungeon master, is it okay for Matt to have said that? Is it like, is he going against the dice or going against what should happen and all this kind of stuff? I mean, probably he's going against the predetermined mechanics of the player. He's going against the rolls being low, and he's going against the player saying that it's happening and what actually happened after that. So it looks like it should have happened, but you're the freaking dungeon master, man. So I respect the control he has over that moment of not wanting that to be a thing, whatever it's going to be. I don't know. Once we finally figure out what this whole thing is, maybe we can reflect back in this moment, and maybe that's why it didn't want to happen yet. But also, there's another thing of like, okay, the dice, and this is a very, like, they did leave and go step away from everybody. They're drinking. This is more casual. She's around a group of people that's nice. Maybe it wouldn't fit in this moment. And Laura was still rolling the dice, and maybe Matt wouldn't have had her roll in this situation, and she was doing it on her own. So there's these gray areas, but keep control as the dungeon master, and don't just let things slip away from you. And then, okay, let's say if it did happen, let's say Matt didn't say no and just let it happen, and there's some big thing, and then like, all right, well, this is what it is now. Okay, do we keep playing the truth or dare game? What? All right, we're getting into the third clip here, and it's going to get a little spicy maybe here. This is my hot take on Matt Mercer's interpretation of a double natural 20. Double natural 20s are crazy. They should be insane, right? It's a 1 in 400 chance of whatever something happening. The amount of times it would happen is very rare, especially rolling with advantage to have those things happen. Those are gonna be rare moments at the table. And I love natural 20s. I could make a whole video on natural 1s and natural 20s and like, oh, how awesome they are. And some of the things that I do as far as my beliefs and rolling for them and what they stand for. But a double natural 20, oh my gosh, it's insane. You should see the reaction, which I will show you the reaction when this happens at the table. What happens is, again, this is Roleplay Central. They are having a bard dueling battle, a musician battle between Dorian and this NPC. They're having a music battle, and they have this whole, Matt sets up this like basically a little skill challenge where what the thing is 3 rounds. Whoever wins best 2 out of 3 wins the showdown, the music showdown. So this first roll happens, and here we go.
Oh, you shit. And I'm gonna pick my loot back out. And is this the devil went down to Georgia scenario right now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna go over to Dorian and just sort of say, well, no matter what happens, just keep it positive, and remember, you don't rush the beat, all right? Okay. and I'll cast enhance ability.
This is
Eagle's Splendor. So you have advantage on all performance checks.
Oh. All right.
How does that look as you cast it upon him?
Oh boy, I've never cast this spell before.
I know, that's why I'm
to do.
First time spells, not standard.
Sure. I'm going to I'll just have you look straight into my eyes, and my eyes will just sort of glow blue, and shine a light into yours, sort of lighting yours up blue for a second.
That feels nice.
That's also another really cool point here about all this role play and all this different stuff. And is it too much? And one thing I love is introducing challenges to your players that is not combat, and they have to use their abilities in ways they never would have thought to use their abilities. They have to use a charisma boosting abilities, guidancing type abilities, different sort of things to be able to boost this player, whether it's actual spells or Liam made a little flower to put in Dorian's hair. Cool stuff that what can your character do for Dorian right now in this specific moment and specific challenge that has nothing to do with combat. So I do love that as another little side note here. But let's get to those double nat 20s.
With advantage.
That'd be a natural 20.
Oh shit! Plus,
See if you can get two. See if you can get two of them.
Just in case.
Plus
Two
what?
veterans. Just so you
plus
roll
your performance.
Oh, plus my performance 27.
Yeah, see, that comes together.
Roll again. Roll again.
I want to see you get
I'm not gonna hit twice. That would never happen. Oh,
Look at everybody.
my friend!
Faces.
Take a picture of that shit.
Do it. It's magic.
I want you to see this full moment.
That I feel blessed. Ow.
Oh, it was
As
like
Annie
he had a moat.
leans in with a fairly fierce performance, how do you respond?
Love that he gives it to the player.
I could stop the rhythm section and just bust out a killer shredding solo, but I don't. I don't.
Not time.
I ease back and I set up a solo for her.
Love that. Spin it on her.
Now, Annie
Watch
was
what
feeling
happens.
confident as soon as you set up the solo. In that moment, you see the look in her eyes of panic as she wasn't expecting to be gone. She was pushing into you to try and get you off of your
Love the
game, and you
description.
immediately reversed it on her. And in that brief moment, you can see there's a gap in her part, and for a few beats, the bow of her fiddle doesn't move. And then she kind of shakes and tries to catch up, and you threw her off tremendously on that bit. Just go ahead and do another performance roll.
Oh my
This
god.
is a progressive challenge.
Okay.
You're like, no.
You still have advantage.
Ooh.
Advantage.
Okay, 22.
22. Okay.
Okay, so that clip is a little longer than I usually show, but I wanted you to get the full picture from the first natural 20, the second natural 20. Everyone loses their mind. The description and the beautiful, Matt offered it up to, this is a double nat 20. Robbie, what do you want to do with this nat 20? He's going to give it to her. He's not going to do it. He's going to it's like, you think he would just be describe some sort of crazy shredding that he did musically or whatever, but he's like, no, I'm going to give it back to her. And so I thought that was really awesome. But then a double natural 20 just counts as a single success in this challenge. And then there's another roll. And then now this person rolls and then they won. And just spoilers, the second roll, he rolled a 22. This other person apparently rolled pretty high and they won the second round. So after a double natural 20, this other person beats them in a single roll, and Matt Mercer describes this.
His physical body language, she kind of almost begins to stand a bit from that sitting position where she was eating. She's now up and is beginning to kind of domineer you just from a stature. Even though she's effectively shorter than you from standing height, right now there is a force of intention there. And while you both are fairly evenly matched, she's beginning to crest beyond. She rolled pretty well and is like just starting to push over that, and her solo's starting to pick. And the rest of you are like, damn, this girl's got some skills.
This girl's got some skills.
Do you see maybe where I'm going here with this? A double natural 20, and then she beats him in a check, and she's peering over him, domineering over him. She's about to win. Her song's good. Like, after what just happened, that's the result. That's crazy. What happened to the double natural 20? What happened to the single natural 20? You know what I'm saying? So to break this down, I'm going to do this in two different ways. The first breakdown is going to be the stance opposed to this. Be like, no, this is ridiculous. The double natural 20 must prevail, rah. And then I'm going to back it up with the other side of that argument. And I would love to see what you guys' thoughts here on this. Down in the comments. I really love it. And again, please, in these things, keep these positive. This is not me saying Matt is wrong in this way. Every dungeon master has a different philosophy on their dice in the game and how they should run it. And listen to the second part too, because I'm going to back up Matt Mercer in this decision. But we're going to first start with really breaking it down, because Also, whenever you're making this Bard versus Bard challenge, he rolls a natural 20. The other character did not roll a natural 20, right? And so he's like, oh, plus what though? Plus what? You know what I'm saying? For me as a dungeon master, that's crazy, because if I'm setting this up as a legitimate challenge between a decently high level bard and this regular person that they're playing in some sort of music battle in, unless this NPC has a bigger music background that I'm not aware of, but these are evenly matched people. He natural 20s, it's gonna beat a not natural 20. I most likely won't have this thing unless you're trying to put him against a challenge against somebody far better than them. But that's not the vibe that I picked up from the setup of this whole thing. Is he wants to battle this person. A natural 20, they'd have to roll a natural 20 because he freaking beats him like crazy. That's, oh my gosh. And then a double natural 20. Something more has to happen, because if you treat natural 20s with this respect and this elevation, then it makes these moments and the excitement you saw, you all watched how excited, that it actually matters more than just, oh, you won one. Okay, now let's do the next one. It matters more than that because you saw it matter more with their energy at the table, right? So myself, Matt never said that it was best of 3. So myself in that moment, I'm like, all right, wow, okay, they won that one, but I can't have them win both, and that would feel bad, which I'll get into this in a second, if it was just over there maybe. Or maybe it wouldn't feel bad. Maybe that would be amazing if they just instantly win right there. I don't know. That's a pulse check that you have to have as a dungeon master. But myself, I might be like, this is what I planned on, but wow, I gotta have it count more than that. Okay, new plan, bloop, on the fly, it's best of 5. Here we go. And first round, and now I would say it's best of 5. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, okay. This whole thing's a best of 5. That is 2. I'm counting that whole thing as 2 successes. That's insane. That's crazy. Oh my God. But we still got 3 rounds to go, baby. Here we go. And then now you're building off of that excitement. You're building off, and it matters. All that excitement and hype that everyone had matters more than just you beat them by a certain amount over. Like, it's crazy. So you let it represent crazy in the mechanics as well. So it counts for 2 successes. Here we go. We got 3 more rounds. You just need 1 more. So he's going to get it most likely. You know what I mean? And she would have lost the second one and then got it on that one. Oh my gosh. And it's the same story, right? Of what we saw. It's the same story of what happens. But I think that would feel better at the table and reward those double natural 20s. And I don't know what Robbie's thoughts are on this, because Robbie isn't a great player. I love Robbie. He's great. It fits in with the team well. He has a great personality with the whole thing and perspective on the game and just energy about him. So I don't think he was too butthurt by it. But if double natural 20 and then she beats you by a couple points from a 22 that you rolled, and then it's described as her domineering over you and starting to win the battle, wait a second. Well, wait a second. Whoa. So for me, that moment felt a little bad. There's a little bit weird taste in my mouth because I just respect the natural 20s so much. And I'll say at the same time, I respect the natural ones as well. Things get real bad with natural ones, especially double natural ones. There's plenty of stories for that as well, because the extremes are important. So I could make a whole video on that. But also, side note, Matt's NPC also rolled a natural 1 in that final round and like broke a string or whatever. So it was all, it all came back around and everything like that. But again, an NPC rolling a natural 1, everyone's like, oh wow, it was a 1 on the thing. That's cool. So it was a cool moment, but you can't compete against a double natural 20 moment that all those players had that led to effectively no real gains mechanically. You get the idea. Now to go on the other side of things, because I do think it's important to see this from both sides. It was a great move. It was a terrible move, because it's not great or terrible. It's his move, which was always going to be his move. It's the right thing for his table. It's the move he made, and the story happened, and we go with it. You don't stop. I love breaking these things down because you don't do this while you play. You just have fun, and they obviously had fun. That's the whole point. But I want to see, what would you do at your table? How would you handle these types of moments? Because one thing that I want to give props to Matt for is, if this was his system and he's sticking to it, you get a natural 20 up plus how much? Because this person might maybe have rolled a 19 or something and have a higher plus, so then they win or something still. What's the thing? Okay, cool. You got 1 more. We got to go in the second round. This is going to be consecutive now. You got to earn it, baby. So there's respect there of having to earn it and not just having the whole thing be washed away like, oh, double natural 20, you win the whole thing. That maybe wouldn't feel as earned. And Matt's going to make him really feel like he's earning it. Okay, you got this natural 20 thing, but she's overpowering you. And he's really keeps that challenge over him. And it's a great thing to describe as a dungeon master that you're about to lose. So this moment when he describes you're about to lose, that's a great thing to do as a dungeon master of here, it all comes down to this roll. Right? So one success, one failure. It all comes down to this. She's domineering over you. That's a perfect thing to say before the final roll, because if she wins, oh gosh, she got it. Dang. And if you win after just of describing this person's coming, and you came back and got it, that's amazing. That's epic. I just got chills thinking about it. That's perfect and amazing. I love it. So I will say that Matt Mercer stays true to his view on natural 20s, because he always asks when someone rolls a natural 20, what plus what? Because the math and balance of all these things matter, and to see what the actual modifiers were and all that kind of stuff. You don't get a free ride for natural 20s at Matt Mercer's table. You got to earn it, baby. And I respect that. And he stuck true to his 3 system, right? But I'm saying as a dungeon master, there's going to be some times maybe where you could shake it up and be like, okay, here we go. I'm going to change some things on the back end now to make this thing a bigger deal. What happens on a double natural 20? We can't prepare for that. So be ready to adapt and change. Another homebrew thought that just popped into my head here is, after a moment like that, after a double natural 20, you can give advantage to the next roll. Oh, but he already has advantage. Sure, give him a +2 with advantage on his next roll. Give him a +5. Why not? Have him roll an additional D6 on top of it and let him use the bardic inspiration for his own thing. Whatever types of stuff. But in general, I just feel like there should be something happen when there's a double natural 20 at the table, because man, oh man, those things are important. And if your dungeon master embraces those moments, all that excitement is going to be led into something happening. So there's the 2 sides on that. Do you let the dice tell the story in the magnitude of the natural 20, saying this moment, double natural 20, Dorian Storm just wins? Like, I totally see that. Like, if double natural, I would not bat an eye if someone's like, yeah, no, that you just win. Like, wow. And if that's what the dice tell the story, because that moment is crazy, that's the dice telling the story, and then you run with it because that moment's insane. Or you can have the dice tell the story in it's best of 3. We're going to roll the dice 3 times, and the dice are going to tell the story in this way. Both are valid, both are cool, and I love seeing these things. I love seeing you guys' thoughts on this down in the comments. Let me just say this too. I have learned more from Matt Mercer as a dungeon master than probably anybody. I've seen him the longest. Brennan Lee Mulligan is obviously, of course, up there, and I have a whole video about why he's my absolute favorite dungeon master. But I've learned so much from Matt Mercer, and hopefully you can learn from the different things I say here on this channel, the different DMs that you watch, but you also learn from people doing things that you wouldn't do, because as soon as you see it, then you're like, oh, I wouldn't do that. I don't know. And you start thinking about the things that you would do. And that's what I love the most here about this series, is I'm going to try and say stuff that you might not agree with, but at least you not agreeing with it is a process of you learning what you do want to do. So let's talk about it down in the comments. Stay nice to each other and stay thinking outside the box. Peace.
And don't forget to become a patron and get really cool stuff.